What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Queen Naja, and we are back with another episode of All Facts. Today, I'm here with my college friend.
Hi.
Aude, introduce yourself.
Hey girl. So I'm Aude Marie-Alexandra.
Mhm.
I am a
Beautiful name.
Thank
What does
you.
it mean?
Aude is just like a French name.
Okay.
Marie is Marie, and then Alex. I don't know what Alexandra means. I should probably look into. I'm sure there's an actual meaning, but I don't know. My mom just like did her thing and it worked.
Okay, well, it's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
Aude is graduating in May. Did you say May? Or
I'm
December?
graduating in like a week. Yeah.
Aude is graduating in a week
Yes.
from college, you guys.
Yes.
I met her. We were both in the communications department. We were both at the radio station. So this is my girl. Today we're going to talk about boundaries. Boundaries are very, very important, I think, especially as a young lady, as a young woman growing up. Boundaries are important. First of all, what is boundary? What is a boundary?
So as people, I think we all have values, right? And so we all have lines we don't want to cross with people around us, right?
Okay.
So a boundary is just limits that you put in your relationships, like how far you're willing to let that people go, what you accept, what you don't accept, right?
Mm-hmm. And what happens when someone crosses a boundary? Do you cut them off, no communication, or like what do you do? Do you talk to them about it?
I think it depends on the person. It depends on the situation. And for me personally, it's complicated because I don't realize that my boundaries were crossed in that moment, if that makes any sense. Like, I have to go back and process it and be like, ooh, I didn't like that.
Okay.
You know, I don't like to react on feelings. So sometimes I'm like, is it my feelings talking, or is it something that I'm really not happy with,
Right.
you know? So I have to go back, think about it, and then it's either a cut off or, you know, I value this relationship enough to go back and have a discussion, right?
Exactly. Because I think that when you said you don't like to react off of your emotions, I think that that's very important, because sometimes, you know, when we react off of our emotions, it could be bad. We could go to jail. You know, we can just do things that we'll end up regretting. So I think that's a very good skill. What are some boundaries that you have friendship wise? Let's talk about friendship wise first.
Okay.
And then relationship, family.
I think my biggest boundary friendship wise is disrespect. And I also think it's when people get close to you, they stop asking before they do things. Like, if I say you can do this, then you can keep doing it, you know, it's fine. But I feel like when you're gonna do something new, the first, you know, thought should be to ask, you know.
Okay.
So I think disrespect comes in that, especially when it comes to like my personal space, maybe using my stuff, things like that. But I'm not too picky on that, but it's very depending on the relationship itself. So I feel like when it comes to friendship, at least we should at least talk about these things before we just assume and do. Does that make sense? Because there's different levels of friendship, right?
Yeah.
You know, different friends have different access to you, you know?
Yeah. I think that's very true, especially in college. You're sharing a lot.
Yes.
Do you have your own room?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes. Oh
have
my God.
have you always?
At the beginning of the semester, I had a roommate, and that did not work out for me.
Really?
Yeah, they put me in the freshman hall, and so I had a freshman roommate, and she was also white. So I think there was a lot of differences between us, backgrounds, culture, everything. So it just didn't work out for me, and I ended up getting my space. But actually, while I was going through that process with housing, I felt like there were people, you know, either in housing or even like people in the Berry that were just like crossing my boundaries in different ways. You don't think that people who you're only dealing with professionally would cross your, but they really do.
Yeah.
They really do.
How did they cross your boundaries in particular? Just give
So
an example.
instead of asking, for example, for my room, I could tell you, instead of asking like, do you want to move, he kind of said, you know, you should move, you have to move. Like, give me the choice.
He
didn't give me the choice. He just, was trying to make life easier for somebody else. So he was like, that's what you're gonna do. So, and I was like, but why are you making me do things without asking me for my permission? Right? But that also happens in different ways of college, where, for example, you could let like a professor have some access to your personal life, and so because they kind of know you a little bit, they get a little carried away. They might say one or two things that are not necessarily appropriate, but they don't even realize that because they think they're close to you as a student. Like, I think it's complicated because I want people to get comfortable with me. We all do, right? But at the same time, there's such a thing as too comfortable, so the lines get easily blurred.
Don't get too comfortable.
Don't get too right. Do not.
Yeah.
And do you think that applies to relationships too?
Getting too comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
How?
I believe in the whole don't like a guy, or don't show a guy that you like him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in that just because guys can take advantage of it. Absolutely. Especially when they know that you're a sweet person, you're a genuine person. I think that guys take that and they go a mile.
But then
you give them an inch, they go a mile.
But then isn't it like, it's complicated too, because if you're trying to talk to someone or let somebody in on your life, or you want to be able to let yourself feel and not calculate as much.
That is true.
So how do you find that balance?
I think since I'm young, I can manage it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, of course, when I get married and start a family, of course, I'll open up more.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I'm just focused, and I can like a guy, but it won't be something so serious. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
If that makes sense. But yeah, I think that what would be a boundary for that?
For like
what boundaries do you have in your relationships?
I think I make things very clear. My rules are very clear.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't accept and what I do accept. It does depend on the kind of relationship I'm having with the person, because like you said, we're young, so it's not always going to be serious, right? So depending on how serious it is, my rules are always very clear. And you cross them, you get blocked. Like, people know.
So in the beginning, the beginning, like the dating stage,
in the beginning,
or like, how do you do it exactly when you make it clear? Is there a clear conversation? Like, what do you do exactly?
I'm gonna have that conversation once I start liking you, because otherwise I don't think there's a point. Like,
of course,
if I don't, and then I also don't hold people I'm just dating accountable for some things, because I know it's just dating. You know what I mean? It's not that serious. But once it becomes serious, at least for me, like, I will pull up. I'll be like, so where do you want? Like, what is this? And like, if it's staying right here, that's okay. But we gotta know right now before I get involved. You know what I mean? Like, we both agree on what we want this to be. And if we want this to be this, then here are my rules. What are your rules? And I feel like men don't like talking about that.
They don't.
That's their business.
Have you ever fell in love with your friend? Like, has it ever been a relationship where you're friends and then you guys start to like each other? Has that ever happened to you?
No, because my boundaries are that like, I really if I put you in the friend section in my brain, you're not getting out of that, baby.
Yeah. Like, forever.
Have you?
A couple of times. Yeah, because it starts as a friendship, and then you guys hang out with each other and they take you on dates and they do all of these things, and then it's like, I kind of like him. So it kind of gets like that sometimes for me. Is that a boundary that I need to place?
It depends. Are you unhappy with that? Like, do you mind having your relationships kind of flow from friendship to? Because if you don't, then it's okay.
I think that friendship is important for me.
Can I ask you something? When the relationship changes into something more than a friendship, does that ruin the friendship in the end?
That's the thing. I hate that. Like, I would hate for that to happen. Have you ever wanted to be a friend with your ex?
That doesn't work But it doesn't
It
mean that
doesn't?
I still try.
Because
I still
it's
try,
so
but it's
weird.
still.
I'm friends with like 3 of my exes.
I'm friends with one of my exes. But I can tell that sometimes, it gets a little blurry. Yeah, that's not okay.
It's not.
It's really not, girl. I feel you. I really do.
No, it's not.
But I think because you know in your mind that it's never gonna become what it used to be again. It's just it is gonna be friendship. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's how I feel like that's how I can keep it at that level because I don't want to be with them. When I break up with someone, I understand that we broke up for a reason. So it's like I don't want to be with you, but you're cool. So we can
My
be friends.
friend told me something about that recently. Actually, she was like, "What happens when you do that is the reason why you broke up with that person, right? Probably has some trauma attached to it, right?
For me or for them? Or
in general,
trauma,
for somebody in there, usually if it didn't, feelings were there, feelings are not there anymore. It's because somebody did something to somebody else, even if it wasn't like purposefully, right? So it means that there was some trauma in there somewhere. And so when you stay friends with that person, it's like when you talk to them, you're low-key reminding them or reminding yourself of that trauma. Not consciously, but unconsciously, you're taking yourself back to that place of where you were hurt about that. And when she said that, I was like, ooh.
Interesting point. Is that what happens? We take ourselves back?
I think it kind of does. I think it kind of does. And it won't show up with them anymore because you're not with them anymore, right? But it will show up in the next relationship or in the next thing
because you haven't healed,
and it's still like it's still at the conscious level.
Yeah.
I don't know. Difficult, complicated. She's reevaluating her whole life right now.
Yeah, because
you were saying something.
Honestly, because you know what they say, how if you don't heal from something, it repeats itself. So that's why I'm just like analyzing it, because you know how do you feel like sometimes you run into relationships where there's similar people but in different bodies, or no? Has everyone you dated been different? Really?
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I've just run into like similar people with similar characteristics, and it's like I didn't learn from it, so it's repeating itself, if that makes sense.
I know what
that's why I was
about.
thinking about it so hard.
For me, they're all different, but they're all toxic. So I guess you could say that would be but I feel like that's most men generally, so I don't even want to, you know what I mean? But anyways, so I don't even want to say it, but I know what you mean, because I have seen that the way I have been treated in the end, there are very similar patterns that pop up again. And then you start asking yourself, like, is it me?
Is it? No, but it's not. I say it's not, because I feel like, first of all, I've come to the realization that we're like in our, are you 20?
22.
22. We're in our early 20s. I feel like we should just be dating and having fun. I feel like maybe the guys will get more mature and better when I'm like
older.
Yeah.
I get so bored with that though. Because if I'm dating you and it's just like regular dating, then somewhere in my mind, I know it's just like, we're chill, but I'm not going to let myself go any further. And so eventually when I keep doing that once, twice, 3 times, I'm like, okay, now I want the spark once in a while. And I don't get that from just dating.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't mind being single either. So I'm chilling. I'm chilling.
I think being single is fun.
Agreed.
Less stress, no stress. Especially when it comes to a relationship, because sometimes when you're in your relationship, you're so focused on it, and it takes so much away from you sometimes.
And it's so much work.
Especially if it's a toxic relationship and it's not helping you or benefiting you.
Even if it's not toxic, I think at this age there's so much you want to like experiment with, do. Like, for example, I want to go to carnival, and then it might be an issue because you're over there thinking I'm doing something else, or you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just so much like life experience that we want to have at this age
on that
when you have somebody else to take into accountability, it becomes
you always have to think about them, always have to think about how they'll feel or what they'll think, or and sometimes if they're insecure, the insecurities will come up, and it has nothing to do with you, but it has something to do with their past, and you have to help them. It's just too much.
It's a lot,
Let's talk about family boundaries.
Okay.
You're young. What boundaries do you have? Well, do you have any boundaries for your family?
For my family? Okay, so because I'm from the Ivory Coast, right? Because I'm from West Africa, that brings an element of like, it brings an element of like, the whole saying, like, it takes a village, whatever, to raise a child. So I feel like there's a lot of like extended family who often feel like they have a say in what I do with my life, right?
Okay.
And I don't like that, because you don't do anything else for me except when you show up to criticize, right? And they even feel like they have a say in, like, what you wear, how you da. And they also feel like that has something to do with how your parents are parenting and what kind of parents they are. So when it comes to boundaries with extended family, don't get it. You don't know me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, when we meet up at family events, we're going to meet up, we're going to laugh, we're going to joke. But after that, you can't get too much into my life unless you're somebody who is an extended family member who often is putting in input and helping me with things. That's different, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to my immediate parents, I think the one thing I have learned as I've grown up is, if I don't feel like explaining, I don't feel like putting the energy, I don't feel like talking to you, like, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to pick up the phone. I'm not going to, because I need to take care of myself before I reassure everybody else. Right.
Taking care of yourself, because you can't pour into someone else if your glass is empty.
Absolutely.
So I think that's very important.
Do you have any
boundaries
when it comes to family?
Boundaries with my family. I'm trying to think. I feel like I have them, but they're overlooked. If that makes sense. I think that, because I'm not from Miami, so me coming here and then actually getting an apartment here and then starting my own life out here, it was a way of independence for me. Because, I'm the only child, my mom's only child, I'm the only person, in Miami for the family, I'm working on my career, stuff like that. But I think that that's kind of how I forced my boundary, just to let my parents know that, hey, I'm growing up. This is what I want to do. I'm independent. I feel like sometimes, not to put them on the spot, but sometimes my mom could be a little much for me with the whole privacy thing and things like that. So I just feel like that's sort of how I created that boundary, just to let them know, hey, I'm good. You raised me correctly. I'm out here and
ready to do my own thing.
I feel like it's kind of like a privacy boundary.
I get that. And I get that with the only child thing too, because I think only child are so close to I'm an only child. I'm so close to my mom. We're so close that she wants to share everything with me, which is amazing, but I can't do it for too long because I also need my independence.
Yes.
Right.
Like, that's very, very important for me. Being the only child, you were alone. I was home alone for a lot of the time, so I know myself very well. I know that I can be alone and I'll just be perfectly fine. But it's like when you're separated, you're in a whole different state. Like, I understand, you can be worried and things like that, but I feel like when it gets to the point where you try to control what I do or criticize what I do or just like invade my privacy, that's where it's a problem for me.
There's another boundary that I think is important with family is social media. Depending on the family member, there's certain, I will not let you see some of the stuff I do, not because I am ashamed of what I do, just because it is none of your business, and I don't think it should be like dinner table conversation one day.
Yeah.
So just because I know it shouldn't be, I'm not gonna let you see it. I'm not gonna let you see it.
No, for real.
You know, like I think that's a big
that.
one. Like you gotta filter what family members get to see, what aspects of your life.
I felt that, definitely. So yeah, family and social media, I think, especially, you know, our family, the older generation, they didn't come up on social media. So, you know, us, I feel like we know how to manage it. We know how to separate it. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, some parents are cool, but I feel like that's a problem for me. Privacy, social media, you know, my independence and things like that, the things that I do. You know, I'm in Miami, I'm having fun, I'm living life out here.
As you should. As you should, girl.
Okay, well, let's get into fact or fiction.
Okay.
Before we wrap it up. Oh, is there anything else that you wanted to mention about boundaries?
I think I'm good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's play a game of fact or fiction.
Yay.
Okay, so when you get in a relationship, you should clearly state the expectations and the boundaries that you have.
Fact.
And if you don't, what will happen?
It's gonna become a problem later. Like instead of little by little talking about things, because there's gonna be more things to figure out as you go along anyways. This is two different people trying to come together. So to be able to have less of that, you know, adversity coming in later in the relationship, I feel like you should have that first conversation to kind of lay the ground so you can build up instead of starting to build it from the bottom up as you're in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and fact or fiction, if someone crosses my boundaries, would it be okay to cut them off?
Fact.
Just cold turkey.
Depending on the person, if you feel like you're at that level, cut them off. I'm not saying do it with every person that crosses your boundaries every single time, but I do believe that if you feel like it's too far, then it's too far, and you don't even have to talk about it if you don't want to. If you don't have the energy to, just go.
Exactly. I think that that's good for ladies our age to actually know, because you don't have to stay if you don't want to stay.
And you know what I've noticed? Once you tell somebody like, here's what you did wrong, you're giving them the opportunity to lie, make excuses, or do the right thing. See how there's 3 options?
Yeah.
Not everybody's gonna pick the right option, which is do the right thing. You know what I'm saying? So if you see a pattern and you want to cut off, I say go for it.
Snip, snip.
Snip, snip.
Do what you gotta do.
Do what you gotta do.
Okay, Aude, well, I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so
my
much
love.
for having
Thank
me.
you for coming.
Of course.
Thank you so much for coming. Is there anything that you wanted to mention? Anything that you have coming up? Anything that you want to tell the people?
I do have a podcast coming, but I don't know when yet. Because I'm living Barry, so
you
I'm
heard
living,
it here first.
Yes, because I'm done with the student radio, so I feel like I should, the next step would be a podcast.
Okay,
so.
but you have a radio show at Barry. Tell us about that. How's that going?
That is going amazing.
Okay,
I loved it. I had a great episode actually yesterday, and I have another one next Monday at 4.
Okay, is it every Monday at 4?
It's every Monday at 4.
Okay,
yes.
And where can they tune in?
Just on 99.5 The Mix, and
Period.
on the link is gonna be on my Instagram bio. My Instagram is Error. Thank you.
Oh, can you tell them your Instagram?
Yes. So it's _ERROUR _.
Perfect.
Thank you. Come over. It's fun over there too.
Well, I love the podcasts that are coming up. The guest that I had before, she mentioned that she was doing a podcast too. Ooh. I love it, actually. I feel like, how do you feel? Okay, coming from radio, how do you feel that a podcast is different from radio? Because I remember being on radio, a lot of people used to say, oh, how can I tune into your podcast? And it would low-key irritate me because I'm like, this is not a podcast, it's a radio show. So can you explain like what's the difference? How do you feel like it's different, and which one do you like better?
I feel like podcast would be so much better just because it doesn't have that like live aspect to it. Like you don't have to, of course, be available at that exact same time to be able to enjoy my show. You know, you can always go, and that's nothing. You can always go back to it, and that's for them as much as for me. Like for example, if I feel like I need advice or something, and you know, like today we talked about boundaries, right? So if tomorrow I'm thinking about boundaries and I'm like, what should I do about this? I could come back and listen to whatever it was that we already recorded because it has that availability. So I feel like I like podcasting a little better, but that's just personal. Which one do you like better?
I think that being on radio is a skill.
I agree.
I think that radio is a skill that you have to have because people on radio, they're hype 24/7. If you want to promote something, if you want to get your music out there, hype. They're gonna play the mixtape. They're gonna play everything, and it's a skill. It's a style that you have to have. You know, especially being live.
Yes,
there cannot be any dead air. I cannot go back and edit it. Like this is live. Everyone's listening to you. So I definitely think it's a skill. I think that it can be challenging to people, especially if you're just coming into it. So I like that part because it challenges me, and I like, you know, some sort of a challenge. But then sometimes I want to come in a jumper, and I mean, you can do that with radio because no one's looking at you, but sometimes I just want to chill and be with my friends and just talk about whatever, you know. I don't want to be hype at 3 a.m. like, hey, good morning, this is, you know.
I get what you're saying.
So
it makes sense, and I feel like it's better to transition from radio to podcasting instead of the other way around because of the radio skills that you talked about.
Yeah, because I think that that's very important because a lot of people are starting podcasts, and you know, I'm rooting for it. I love it, but you know, I feel like going to school, you know, actually having a degree in this, you know, actually being a broadcasting major, I think that that is something that you can level up off of because there's certain things that we know that they don't know.
Right.
You know, it's certain styles that we know what to do that they don't.
Right.
So I feel like that's an advantage definitely for us.
I definitely agree.
Okay, y'all, that's all the time that we have. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's another episode of All Facts. Make sure that y'all stream on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. It's the best podcast in Miami. You already know we lit. Make sure that y'all follow me on Instagram too. allfacts.ent. That is my new Instagram page for my podcast. So thank you guys if you stayed this long. Bye.
Bye.